So we've reached the end of H1 just. How has it been for professional services so far?
We had a really strong start the first quarter, which was great, really great start to the year. Post-Easter, probably a little bit of a flatter market, albeit that since probably June time, markets started to become more active, to warm up. And we're definitely seeing trends of organisations and firms asking people to come back together to collaborate more, so spending more time together in person. Across most sectors, I would say that businesses are aware, and I think individuals, of the benefit of being with your colleagues and spending time learning from each other.
Yeah, I think that trend of obviously getting people back to the office for us across, well, I'd say most professional services firms that we're working with, it's certainly been in conversation, hasn't it? If not now, when? I don't think it's so much of an if anymore. I think there will be, a day probably added on to lots of people's working patterns at the moment, or at least a suggestion, just because of the benefit, like you say, of having everyone back in the office.
You can see at the moment when you talk to organisations, to chief people officers, chief HR officers, in those advisory firms, whether it's lawyers or accountants or surveyors, they reflect that the individuals who've come through at their more early stages of career over the last 5 years have been disadvantaged, particularly during COVID, because they couldn't be with other people to learn from. There is a recognition, I think, of how important it is for the generations coming through to be able to learn from each other on a personal basis. It's just great to be with other human beings and enjoy their time and their culture and their knowledge and expertise. That is definitely a theme that I think businesses really focus on, how they can continue to support their people in developing them professionally. Yeah,
and it'll be interesting to see whether some hold out and that will become perhaps a bit of a USP, that they continue to operate 2 days a week or have that flexibility, and whether that will be something that people still look for in 2 or 3 years' time, or whether it will have just become more normal now for us to be back in the office 4 days a week, let's say. It seems to be where a lot of businesses are landing on. I've found 4 days, certainly if they were 3 in the last couple of years. I think the tendency will be for a lot to follow suit, but you don't know, do you? It's difficult. But I think it's still very much a high-level discussion with HR at the moment.
How has the interim market been this year?
Again, probably similar to the perm in that we had a very good start, and actually we had a great surge towards the end of last year, and I think a lot of people getting plans in place about possible restructuring and starting to see the impact of private equity investments, particularly into the mid-tier accounting space, which we did notice over the last couple of years, and I think that has started to take hold a bit in how those teams and structures want to look or need to look. So there was a bit of a need to get interims in to support with that. And we've kind of seen that continue to roll. I mean, in some cases, it's been a case of right-sizing, downsizing, bit of restructuring, but still having people in to help support that process. Maternity covers and those sort of slotting in to fill a gap roles have continued, but again, it's probably not been as big a space as we've been used to. It's been much more about specialist skill sets, 2P restructuring, like I was saying, leading on redundancy processes in some cases, but there's still HR work there. I think, again, a trend off the back of that has also been the temptation to pull roles together, and as a result of some of this restructuring, see where positions can be blended a bit more. So in talent, for example, with talent acquisition and talent management, that role coming a bit closer together, with business partnering, pulling in then perhaps projects roles into that, or even in the recruitment space where that's been quieter, getting those people to do other projects, EVP, branding, that sort of world has kind of blown up a bit. But I think it's a result of then a lot of people now probably managing 2 jobs potentially, and at the moment managing with that while teams are quite lean. But there will be a point, I think, where that will also become a bit of a pressure. There's a lot of people now who are double hatting ultimately, in some cases possibly triple hatting.
I would agree. I think one of the things that you see in terms of the conversations with that sort of C-suite is that cost efficiency, focus on cost reduction, all very sensible things in running and driving a business forward. But there's a huge focus on that at the moment, which is potentially, to your point around people double or triple hatting, potentially if we look forward, do we or might we see the Great Resignation 2.0 when the market does start to become busier and more active? I could absolutely see that being a possible outcome of efficiencies that businesses are driving at the moment may longer term have an impact on people's desire to step out of or step into new and different organisations.
Yeah. I think a lot of firms would say they're certainly at the sort of end of that process of driving efficiency and cost reduction and really looking at where they can make that saving. I think what people are left with at the moment, they feel really is the bare bones, if you like. It's operating, and with the adoption of AI now, in some cases, I think it's allowed those efficiencies to really take hold, and in some cases, that probably won't come back, but there would be more appetite to look as and when the market picks up, because people have been, arguably quite burnt out now for a year to 18 months.
To your point, I think that we are seeing with some organisations who are embracing AI, some of those people are going, I might say, ahead of the curve in terms of restructuring, changing their businesses, with a view that AI will very quickly pick up that work. And some other businesses are taking a different direction of applying that, embedding it over probably 12 to 18 months, and then restructuring the organisations. It will be interesting to see how that plays out, where AI can be seen as the sort of panacea to all things. It's clearly going to have a huge impact and great benefits to business and to us as individuals. But I think some businesses are rushing in a little earlier than they perhaps should do, and they may find short-term a bit of a gap between their sort of resources, their capability, before AI really starts to become effective for them. The
uptake in some, arguably those more junior roles where there has been now focus on some cost reduction and downsizing. Will it get to a point where those people are now double, triple hatting and have been for quite a long time, and as and when the market improves, will they have more confidence then to look for something else? Looking ahead to the second half there, any thoughts or reflections, what you see may happen? Continue, I think, as we have been. I mean, like I said, I think still with that rise of a lot of specialist skills, I'm certainly more aware of good interims now who've got a bit of a blend of experience. And I think, it's just having the foresight to think what businesses might be needing over the next year to 18 months. I think that there's certainly going to be more of a look for people who can do more than just perhaps a business partnering role or sitting very much in that learning space. Have they got a marketing stand to them to help with some branding EVP as a business partner? Have you got quite a lot of restructuring experience under your belt, and could then you be pulled into that resource too? I think it's about seeing where people can be more versatile, or arguably start to feel or become more versatile as businesses blend a bit more in that, maybe traditional HR sphere of business partnering, recruitment, learning, reward. Might there be a bit more of a blend of experience now moving forward? Or that becomes more attractive moving forward, possibly? One of the trends that we've seen so far this year, and I think will absolutely accelerate as the year goes on, is the greater amount of interest and conversations we're having with our transatlantic clients, so particularly US-led organisations and firms who are looking at the UK, Europe, the rest of the world. We are absolutely seeing more interest and focus from those businesses on how that kind of connectivity outside the US works. That connection across the Atlantic is going to continue to accelerate and become more active as the year goes on. And hence, your role obviously going more global as a result of that, and us mirroring what we're seeing happening with our clients. How have you found your global role so far this year? I think both fascinating in terms of the opportunity to work with clients, around the globe. As a practice, I think our search practice, where we stretch from New York through to Sydney, and talking to my colleagues and our peers who are focused in that space. Whilst in the short term, the markets have been challenging, there's a much more joined up approach from organisations we're talking to and the firms we're talking to about their mid to long term HR strategy and their sort of people and talent strategies. That's a really positive sign that we will see, I think, in the next probably 12 to 18 months really start to come to fruition. And you think there's been a trend in putting that global leadership or HR leadership team slightly more spread out across the key locations? Yeah, firms and businesses are definitely trying to balance the sort of cultural nuances of, if you're in an international or a global business, of not having all of your senior leadership, and particularly from an HR perspective, not having all of your key people in one location. So very much trying to hedge across the globe, having people and having talented HR professionals, talent professionals split across the globe to balance out the portfolio of skill set, but also from a time zone perspective that you're able to support your business, which is a truly global business, not just in one or two time zones, but sort of following the sun. Yeah, and I think we continue to have more and more dual searches or searches in dual locations, or sometimes even triple locations now within our Frazer Jones global team. Certainly sometimes the US and Singapore often as well too. So I think we've seen that as well. Even in the interim space, where they're slightly more flexible in where these people physically are now.
Thank you, Charlotte. That's great. I think it's always interesting to take the time to sit down and just reflect on what we're seeing. I think as we look forward to the second half of the year, I'm very excited about what could happen, the potential, across our clients across the globe.
The market does seem to have really picked up in the last few weeks for us. I expect or anticipate that to continue, and with a lot of conversations we have, people are saying H2 will be the one that will start a lot of some recruitment that they've been sitting on for a while. So we're feeling positive, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.